I thought first I'd just ask you guys some questions about who you are. So, how many of you have been doing Python or any kind of software for less than 2 years, 0 to 2 years? Okay. And how many of you between from that 2 years to 10? Quite a chunk, right? And how many more than 10? I'm in the more than 10 category. Okay. All right, so we have a good mix here. So I think that what I'm trying to do here is it's almost like you get a new computer, and it's like a dog or a cat or some type of little pet, and you want it to do certain things, but it might not do all those things right out of the box. And as time has gone on with computing, we've learned more and more and more ways of being able to get a system into a really good working state faster and faster. And there was a talk earlier today on Docker. Did any of you guys get to attend that? Yeah. Have any of you played with Docker? How many, kind of know a little bit about Docker? Yeah, maybe like the same advanced people. So in the old days, it was like all hardware, like you had a big box, and you would locomote yourself over to this box, and put in little things, and you would get something out. And if you wanted it to do something a lot different, you probably had to get a new box, and it was very expensive, and it might take new air conditioning and all kinds of stuff. So we've evolved, and I feel like there's 4 stages of getting your computer into shape. The first stage is just getting a machine that has stuff on it. That's like the operating system image. So there you've got lots of basic stuff, but it might not be to your liking exactly. It's not to your taste, but you just got it. And then the next step is perhaps the bootstrapping step. And in that, it's about talking. So there, what you're saying is, well, I've got this machine, but does it communicate with me in such a way that I can give it feedback, and it can give me feedback on how to change it and so forth. And then the third level I see is I'm thinking of as training, where I hate it when I can't see my invisible files when I'm on my Mac. And all the brand new Macs, that's all how they come. I open up Finder and none of my little invisible files are there. I hate that. So I need to train my system to stop doing that noxious behavior. And then the step after that, and there's all kinds of little behaviors like that that you might want to customize. And then the level after that is where, for many years, it's kind of been eluding us. We haven't really been able to get a good system for it. And that's where you get into discipline, and particularly when you're changing things. So DevOps comes into play. Now we've got the cloud. Cloud means a lot of different things, but one of the things it means for sure is a lot more computers. So, some people like the big companies, or Netflix and all kinds of other people too, they've got thousands of web servers, and sometimes they spin them all up in an hour, right? And then they spin them all down. That's what happened with the Obama campaign when he was campaigning for president, and he had all these helper people. They spun up Amazon Web Services machines only at the peak demand. So they had a certain campaign, and they were going to ask for whatever it was. Maybe they were going to ask for money and for a certain thing. So they would spin up a whole bunch of servers that would all be able to accept the money. And then as soon as that peak was down, they would turn them off. They wouldn't have to keep paying for them. So I think it's truly, this whole thing is going to just change our world in ways we have no idea of right now. And I'm very excited about it, and I hope that this talk will give you a very small view of some things that you might be able to do and an idea of possibly where to start. Some of you who are more advanced, you probably already know lots of things to do. And it varies a lot in what machine you're having. So if you're on a Windows machine, honestly, there's not nearly as much support yet, because for so many years, Windows is sort of like a closed system. They're getting more open, and they're trying to get more community involvement, but it's a whole different field. For years, people had Linux for free, and they would just put it on any machine that they had. They'd put it on USB sticks, right? Nobody would put Windows on a USB stick ever before. I think you might be able to do that, but never before. So anyway, with all that experience, the Linux machines are the ones that are really out in the far forefront of all of this training of your system. And if you look at Amazon and so forth, there's like tons and tons of tutorials, and Ansible, the program I'm mainly going to be talking about today, pretty much doesn't really support Windows very well. They support Linux super well. Docker, same way. Super support for Linux, but they don't really support Windows yet. Now, in all these things, right, time will change and markets will change and people will make new good things, but that's kind of where it is today, and Mac is sort of in the middle. Mac has a lot of custom things in its machine that aren't really up to Linux snuff, as it were. Like one thing that irritates me is that on any Linux machine you can get the tree command, which in your command line you can just type tree and it will show you all the folders that you've got right there, which I love because especially like in some of these Java projects, oh my goodness, they make folder, right, com, slash, blah, 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 blah. And then usually, or sometimes, there's only one file at the end of this whole leaves. So anyway, in Linux, you can easily check for that. And you can do all kinds of other stuff. The bash shell, right, has lots of features available. So, so those things are available on Windows, but in different ways and not as standardized. So I literally have friends who graduated with me. They started out using Emacs. I didn't like Emacs back then. I kind of wish I had really gotten into Emacs back then. Would have saved me a lot of time now. But, they're still using it, And you can only imagine the productivity you get from having, 20 years in, one editor. And the editor grows with you because it's programmable. So these are the kinds of things we're talking about. We're talking about trying to get everybody up to a much higher level on their machines. And it's going to be different, obviously, for, our audience is really mostly developers and people who care about software a lot. For a normal person who only wants to, watch a movie and, write a little bit of email, I don't think this talk is really going to apply. But, so I think that's a pretty good introduction. And yes? Oh, okay, sure. Should I be farther from it, or are they doing together? He said no. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Can we log in again?
I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
You make it sound that failure to support Windows is a bad thing.
No, I think it's great to support Windows. Oh, say again?
You make it sound like a failure to support Windows is a bad thing. I just don't get it. I'm a Linux guy.
Well, I think, it's sort of like more multicultural the world is, the more I like it. So, I think we all should have choices, that's all. I like Windows. I like it, it has different features. So, so I think that's my good overview here. So what I'm planning to do is kind of take you through a walk of what I did and try to bring up some of the concerns and things to watch out for, and I guess I didn't give you any of my background yet. Yeah, so I come from really good school. I went to MIT, and so I know what really top developers are like. I have quite a few friends that are in that category who started companies and sold them and whatnot. And I meandered a lot more than that. I started out in electrical engineering. I went out into psychology and organizational behavior. I came back to computers. So my path has not really been very linear. And the whole net result of it is that I'm much more of a user-focused person. I'm more of a business person, really. I want this to be so that I can feel comfort that my machine is not going to do something stupid. It's sort of like a safety concern. And And I have a lot of background in reliability and QA and stuff. I did all kinds of work in that. So that's my background. And so my tendency is not normally to write a whole bunch of code and solve all my problems that way. My tendency is much more to do research. And I'll find out, oh, wow, my gosh, 10 different people did this in 10 different ways, and now I'll pick the best one. So that's sort of what I'm going to talk to you about today. And I wasn't sure, really, when I started it, whether Battle School, the one I found first, was going to be the one I would really kind of recommend to you, but I think it is. I have to be honest, I'll say that I haven't done enough testing to be totally sure that I'm right in my opinion yet, but I think the whole field is young, so we don't really know a lot of things about it. But the big picture is, let me show you the blog. Let's see, I'll go find the blog here. So this guy, very recently, back in February, he wrote on his blog about this new software he wrote. And so I have tried Boxen. I tried Boxen in November. So what these systems are is, I'm not going to show you code at first. I hope giving an overview will be helpful. So Boxen and this one, Battle School, and he mentioned, there's one based on Chef. These tools, the idea of them is if you have a new developer, or yourself obviously, coming into a fresh machine and you want to set it up exactly the way you want it, just like I told you, right? All those 4 pieces, make sure that you have a machine with the operating system you want, make sure that it can talk back and forth to find out what updates are available or what software is available. The third part is making sure that it's customized to your taste. And the fourth part, to make sure that when you try to do an upgrade, you won't destroy your system, you won't lose your data, all those good things. So Boxen, I found to be very controlling. So it pretty much, whenever let's see, I'm not sure. I don't have so much time, so I'm not going to get into all the details, I guess, but I found it controlling because whenever I would try to install something that it had already installed, I would get a lot of complaints. And then what I ended up doing is kind of uninstalling pieces of it, piece by piece, until finally Boxen was totally useless. It was just getting in my way, so I uninstalled the whole thing. But the concept is pretty much that, almost like a rake file. Are many of you familiar with, of course, like in Python, the setup, a rake, both of them are like that, right? You'll list the things you want, and then, you make it so by running some program to make it happen. So that's what it was doing, but I just wasn't happy with the lack of flexibility it gave me on deciding when to change things. So like, pretend out of the box it came with, invisibles are must be invisible. The invisible files I told you about. That's not a good example, though, because there aren't versions of that. It has to be something with version. So maybe it's Safari. Maybe I don't like the newest version of Safari for whatever reason. And I want to stick to the old one until I do whatever it is. And yet, this other tool is trying to force me into doing it. That is one of the crux of the problems. If you make a list of things, you have 2 ways of doing it, right? If you make a list of items and you don't have any revision on them, then what that means is you're kind of going to get the latest, right? You don't care about what you're getting. Sometimes that works great because you don't care and you don't want to spend the time and effort to lay it all out. But sometimes it matters a lot. And I think what's going to happen in the future is I think we're going to be able to have a better division of labor. Before, if I wanted to develop something on my machine, I personally had to make sure that if I'm running stack number 1 with, node level 1, and this one is stack number 2, it had node level 2, I had to make sure that I somehow partitioned them on my machine all by myself. But now we're getting all kinds of tools so that I don't have to do that type of stuff. So it's less and less what I need for work, because work you're always going to need a large stack of stuff. and more what my preferences are. And my preferences don't change quite as often as the work stacks. At least that's my experience. So I think what's going to happen is you'll be able to build out your Docker files, run them in a little virtual machine on your system, and all of that will be taken care of, all the stacks, all the different machines, and you can configure that. That's normal DevOps. And then that will be separate from what you want to have. You want to make sure you have the latest Xcode or, different pieces like that. So what he said is he agreed with me. He didn't like how Boxen worked, and he's one of the guys who just says, hey, I can fix this. And he wrote it. He likes Python, I guess, so he wrote Battle School. So it's the same thing. It's working on a list of stuff that you want to achieve. 10 minutes, thank you. And it will be, wow, I am going over. Let's see. So if you, where am I? Start. I think I'll just show you I'll walk you through what he did, and I will comment along the way. So let's go to his repo. Or I'll first just tell you what he's showing. So he didn't want to fork. So he didn't want to have to download source code in order to run this. He wanted a real installer. And so he made it a pip installer. So that's what it is. And he wrote above that you need to have, well, it depends where you're going to, Let's see, did he write it on this page? Yeah, the basic requirement for Ansible is that you have SSH on your machine. So that's a piece I did want to talk to you about. I've worked on this quite a bit recently, and it's my belief that you can't do DevOps without SSH. It's a vital tool, and it's matured tremendously. It has all kinds of options that you can give for it so that you can lock down permissions if you want. That's something I'd like to write up is how to lock down permissions on certain files and stuff. But you can do it all. And so it provides you a way of not having to worry about your passwords. You set up your key, you share your public key with the cryptography, and then, boom, it's magic. You don't have to type that ever again. So that's the basic install that you needed for Ansible, which Battle School depends on. And you need his code. And you need pip itself, of course. So let me go to his stuff. Oh, I'll talk about this briefly too. So this is just how you run it. It's the normal thing. You have some config file. So here he's wanting it to, at the top, he's asking for password, right? And here's the meat of it. So this is a little Ansible file. He hasn't changed Ansible at all. All he did was add a little more to it. So that's another thing I like. I felt like Boxen, maybe I'm wrong because I might not know that infrastructure as well, but I felt like Boxen sort of changed things very radically, whereas he kept Ansible the way it is. So you could run pieces. Like I could tag just that Git portion. I could tag it with tag and's test. And then I could run just that piece if I wanted. And I could tag them different ways, so I could run part of it when I wanted to and none of the others. So is this all pretty clear? Is this, everyone's seen this kind of thing before, right? Any questions on this? That I definitely want to make sure you get. Yes? Mm-hmm.
One will have, with one start, they will have what has been needed.
That's right, exactly. I think I did some of that work in my last job, but I did it manually. So this is a way for those people to start doing it in a more automated fashion. So I think that it would just depend on, whether they like the toolkit. I don't think it matters how big the organization is.
Distinguish between Battle School and
Yep.
Ansible, because I
Yep.
thought what you're describing sounded like what Ansible
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's exactly what Ansible.
Battle School, how they differ.
Yep. So let me show you his.
It is. It's exactly what Ansible
He
is.
made basically a whole other Mac
Yep,
OS X
yep.
playbook
So
set.
let me show
So
you
that's another
his,
repo.
let's see, where his playbook. He made basically a whole nother Mac OS X playbook set. So that's another repo. Let me find that for you. Probably easier this way. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
The main repo
There we
is
go. Okay.
very similar to
So this is the one I'll show you.
They're all similar. It's all Ansible. It's just pure Ansible.
The main repo is very similar to other. They're all similar. It's all Ansible. It's just pure Ansible. So here we go.
Well, this is a small one. But essentially, I'll go back because that one's not really very significant.
Well,
But
this is a small one.
wrote,
But essentially, I'll go back because that one's not really very
extra
significant.
playbooks.
But
So,
he wrote a
most
whole,
of the playbooks around
this
here
whole
are
repo
for
of
OS
extra
X.
playbooks.
So this is custom.
So
for OS X.
most of the playbooks around are
And everything
not
else is
for
exactly
OS
Ansible.
X.
If you know Ansible, you
So
know
this is
this
custom for
already,
OS X.
which I think is one of the real
That's the
benefits
biggest
of it.
difference.
And there are
And everything else
other
is exactly
repos that have
Ansible. If you know
similar,
Ansible, you know this
philosophy.
already, which I think is one of the real
went quite
benefits
far
of
into
it.
one of
And there are a
them,
couple of other
but
repos
they
that
were
have
doing
similar
it by having
philosophy.
Dropbox.
I went quite
keys.
far
They
into
were
one of
keeping
them.
both
There's,
public and private
but they
keys
were
in
doing it
Dropbox,
by
which I don't
having
really like.
Dropbox
So even though it's your own
keys.
Dropbox,
They were
and
keeping
it just
both the
doesn't
public
seem
and
good
private
to me.
key on Dropbox, which I
So
didn't really
here he's
like.
just using normal
So
SSH
even though it's
and
your
normal
own
SSH.
Dropbox, I don't know, it
That's
just
it.
doesn't seem good to me.
um,
So here he's just using normal SSH and normal Ansible, and that's it. So,
So I guess what I
let's
also
see, I
want
see
to
I'm
talk
getting very
about
short here.
was, I talked a lot about a clean system, and that's what I
So,
ended up really
so
doing.
I guess what I also want to talk about was
I made a whole fresh clean
I
system.
talked a lot about a clean system, and that's what I ended up really
USB,
doing.
and
I ran it on my
USB
own.
onto a new
I made a whole
partition.
fresh clean system. I made
Did all that stuff.
OS
You have
X
to
onto a
accept,
USB,
accept the license.
and
This
I
is a piece
loaded
of
the
Linux,
USB
you have
onto a
to
new
do all that
partition.
stuff.
I did all that stuff you have to accept, right? Accept the license. This is the piece where in Linux you don't have to do all that stuff. You can automate it. Maybe in Mac there's some way to do it with GUI something. I'm not sure, but not right now. Not for me anyway. And then once that's all ready, then I ran the Battle School, and then it worked like a charm. So it installed everything.
So the only thing I want to
It installs the package managers, and then you can install other stuff.
systems that don't
And
have a clean
so the only thing I wanted to leave you with
So
was
that's what I really
about
wanted to show you in the beginning. I
systems
was
that
gonna try to do
don't
that, but,
have a
it got
clean
to be too
start.
hard because I
So
was
that's what I
playing
really
Ansible
wanted to show you in the
actually.
beginning. I was going to
I
try
have
to
a
do
special
that, but
version of Clang,
it got to be too hard because I was playing with Haskell on my machine, and I have a special version of Clang, which is the C compiler, which doesn't work very well with all this stuff. So, but basically, because you can call each piece alone, you could pick and choose which ones you want to run. And I think it's going to be like a lot of people have GIFs of their bash profile and so forth. People are going to have GIFs of this, you know, and you'll be able to pick and choose which ones you want, mix and match them.
So you said the Dropbox, you didn't like that.
Any more questions?
Where would you put the keys then? Something
Pardon what?
in the SSH and then I use keys. Where's the Dropbox?
Well, normally you have to create that part yourself. You can do that through Ansible too.
Mhm.
I found.
Well, normally
some,
you have to create that part yourself. You can do
So
that
I'm
through
thinking
Ansible
that,
too,
I
though.
apologize.
I found some code to do that. So the thing I'm lacking, I apologize that I didn't have more time, but I'm going to write a blog about it, and I hope to put in those links and stuff like that to show you. Because that's a very important part, because it's very annoying. You have to. Mhm.
It does care, but not that much, not as much as some tools. I tried doing this on 10.9.
It does care, but not that much, not as much as some tools. I tried
Yeah,
doing
I
this
think it should
on
run at
10.9 just because
10.6 Yeah.
that's what I had available, you know?
I've used
Yeah, I think it should run on
very
10.6 actually.
superficially, and I really like the roles idea in terms of being able to sort of assemble parts of things into the whole. What I've run into is situations, though, specifically for configuration, especially when you're writing a text configuration file, where I want to pull in parts from various different places. And it sounds like that's something that would be likely to happen here if you're maybe assembling some personal preferences and your project team-wide preferences for your editor settings or something like that.
Right.
You can use Ginger, right? So you tried doing that? You can do templates.
So you can do templating, but
You can use Ginger, right? So you tried doing that? You can do templates.
they're coming from both sides or not.
Well, you have the full command line and dash available to you on 910. So if you have anything you can do in dash.
Well, you have the full command line and dash available to you on your own running time.
So we can.
So if you have anything you can do in dash, you can do in Ansible. You just call command and have it run. So you can cat, right, and put them together, chain them that way. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much.